right, so good afternoon and welcome. I'm Mourad Dakhli, Professor of International Business at Georgia State University's Robinson College of Business, and I will serve as the moderator for this session. On behalf of the Atlanta Global Studies Center, the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, and GSU's Global Studies program, I'd like to welcome you to GSU Spring 2022 Global Career Series. This series features representatives from globally connected organizations to talk to the students and recent graduates about rewarding opportunities to work in global spaces, either in Atlanta or abroad. We hope students will feel inspired to build their global skills and pursue global careers, internships, volunteer opportunities, and the likes. Today's session will focus on global commerce and trade. We are delighted to bring to you representatives from Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, and the Atlanta private sector. Our panels are John Woodward, Josh Kaplan, William Miller, and Don Williams. Welcome, guys. I'd like to start by asking the panels to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about how their positions relate to global careers, internships, and volunteer opportunities. And I'll go ahead and we'll ask, I see Joshua here, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you, Mourad, and thank you for having us on this panel today. So as was mentioned, my name is Josh Kaplan. I work for the federal government for a part of the Commerce Department called the International Trade Administration. I'm located in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm the office director here, and we have a team of 3 public-facing staff who work with the local business community to tie them to international sales opportunities around the world. We'll go into more detail, but that probably should get things started. Thank you.
Very good, very good. William?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Miller. I'm one of Josh's colleagues. I'm a senior international trade specialist working for Commerce, International Trade Administration for the Global Markets Western Hemisphere Division. My office is located at Commerce headquarters here in Washington, D.C. I recently transferred from our enforcement and compliance unit where I was an international trade analyst, primarily working on anti-dumping and countervailing duties cases. Very excited to be here and thank you for having us.
Welcome. And let's see, Don.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to speak with my global partners. My name is Don Williams, and I'm CEO of Princeton Technologies, Princeton Healthcare, and actually Princeton Holdings. We are a group and consortium of international companies that do business on 5 continents. And I always look forward to employing interns and the bright students from Georgia State University to help us on exciting projects. I've had the pleasant opportunity to work with Professor Mourad and some of his students, and they have been exceptional on the projects that we've worked on and projects in Africa and South America. So it's been exciting, and I look forward to continuing these efforts.
Great, great. John.
Well, howdy. I echo everybody else. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is John Woodward. I am the Vice President of Global Commerce at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. So I oversee the international team within the Economic Development Division of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, focusing on cross-border trade and investment, foreign direct investment and trade, which would be inbound foreign companies looking at the U.S. market, and outbound, working with companies within our footprint. Our footprint is the 29 county area of Atlanta that are considering expanding overseas or exporting overseas. I'm physically located here in downtown Atlanta, the 191 Tower, not far from some of my government friends here. And Georgia State University, and Georgia State, in fact, speaking of interns, of course, we have a long history of bringing on Georgia State interns. We have a couple here right now with us. And so it's a tremendous opportunity. We've always been very pleased to have that partnership and collaboration.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you all. We are thrilled that you could participate in this panel. Before we continue, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded, as you saw. We ask that you keep your mics muted to reduce any noise during the presentations. There will be about 25 minutes for Q&A after the panelists' presentations. Feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time. And now let's learn more about your organizations. So let's start maybe here, and I'll go with the order of how I see you on the screen with John. John, I think you're on mute.
Muting there. You want us to just describe what we do? I missed that at the beginning.
Yeah, yes. Let us know about what you do and something about your organization. I know the Metro Chamber is very active and does a lot. You mentioned the internship, but so we want to kind of zoom in there and find out more.
Yeah, well, I'll go in reverse order there then for you, just to apprise people of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, which, as I mentioned, is very close proximity to Georgia State University. I could see them right outside my office window here. But we are the Chamber of Commerce, as I mentioned earlier, for the Atlanta metropolitan area. There's 29 counties, 23,000 square kilometers or so, 6.2 million inhabitants. Fun little factoid to drop here is that just earlier this week, if I read the information correctly, we are now the largest metropolitan area by population in the U.S. South. We actually superseded Miami when the latest census numbers came out. So yay for us, yay for Metro Atlanta. Our Chamber of Commerce is actually one of the oldest chambers of commerce in the U.S. We were founded in 1859, before the Civil War, in fact. And interestingly, we were really founded as a trade organization. We were founded, the business community, of course, railroads were really big back then, to do a trade with UK, with England, and actually trade with the northern United States, which some considered a foreign country at the time. And so we have that in our DNA. And as I mentioned earlier, my role is to head up the international team, which focuses on both inbound and outbound trade and development. And we can go into more details on that later if we like. Within the Economic Development Division, where we also have interns, there are three components. There's the global commerce side, which is mine. There's the project management team, which, as the name implies, manages economic development projects, usually working in tandem with the state of Georgia and perhaps with local entities as the project needs. These are companies that you read about in the newspaper that might be recruited or expanding in the area. And then we also have an industry expansion team, ecosystem expansion, we call it, which is comprised of specialists in certain sectors that are objectively strong in Metro Atlanta. So some you may be aware of: fintech, for example, health IT, logistics, obviously supply chain. And so these are, their role is to know those sectors inside and out. So when we're recruiting these companies in those fields, they're able to make those connections and to convene the appropriate folks, hopefully to try to close the deal. So they're interns throughout that process with the Economic Development Division. Just for the sake of the chamber, we also have a public policy team. So we are a 100% private organization, a nonprofit, but we do not take any government money, any government funds. We're funded by the business community. And as such, we actually have a lobbying team. They're effectively professional registered lobbyists. And they lobby principally down at the Georgia State Capitol, just outside the window here, beyond Georgia State University, and the federal government to some degree, to improve the business climate in Georgia. And I won't go into great detail there, but Georgia already has a very favorable business climate. And the public policy team's role is to make sure that that remains such and an attractive place to do business and to recruit companies. So the public policy team also has interns. If there are folks interested in the public policy side, they're tremendously skilled. And then lastly, the ones where all the interns really want to go is the sports division. And that's the division that recruits principally major sporting events to the area. As you can imagine, it's interesting and exciting work, especially if you enjoy the sports. Their big thing they're working on right now, as everyone may know, we're in the running for the 2020 FIFA World Cup. 2026 FIFA World Cup. And so our Atlanta Sports Council has been working on that assiduously for several years now. And we're hoping to get word if we're going to get a World Cup game played just over here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So that is who we are as a chamber, and we work within the region. And I can go in more to my specific responsibilities on the international economic development side, but that gives an idea of who we are. Does that answer your question, Mourad?
Perfect. And as a matter of fact, we should have time later on to talk specifically about your task, hopefully toward the end, but that's exactly what we want to know. I'm not sure if you know it, John, but Georgia State has a lot to do with the creation of the Global Commerce Council at the inception of it, of course, top of the faculty.
I am aware of that, and we work with Jacobus and quite a few others. So Georgia State has been really a leader in a lot of these initiatives. The International Mediation Center is another example, and some of those. So we tremendously appreciate the partnership with Georgia Tech, and just year after year are impressed with what comes out of there.
Yeah, Georgia State and Georgia Tech, absolutely. Very good. Thank you. I'm going to ask Don to tell us about what he does and his organizations, and give us an idea about where he fits in the global network. Don, you're mute.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. We are the Princeton Group. We are involved in development of projects, healthcare and infrastructure projects internationally. And in that capacity, we actually are involved in development of hospital projects and housing projects, as well as other infrastructure projects in a number of different markets. And so we are responsible for, or we in many instances are considered as a developer. We take a concept and create it and make it a reality in a number of areas. And so we are typically brought in to, say, for example, develop a hospital in an emerging market, say in Ghana, where we are asked to take a concept. It could be private sector or it could be a government sector project, and we're asked to help them create a hospital or healthcare initiative that's going to provide services for the community or the citizens of the country. And so we get involved in everything from the financing to bringing a team in to do the architectural development, as well as the construction from A to Z. So the interns that typically work with us, have worked with us in the past from Georgia State, have been involved in everything from doing market studies to doing work relative to understanding what's going on in that particular market specific to healthcare. What is the policy for the country or countries with respect to establishing healthcare initiatives in the region? So they get a real good understanding of how to develop a project and from A to Z. And so we do that in a number of markets. Could be Brazil, could be China, could be India. So we're heavily involved in emerging markets, which is quite fascinating today, because that's really where a lot of the growth is. And so the students get a chance to firsthand get an opportunity to see how to really take a concept and make it a reality when they work with our firm. So they pick up a lot of skills. They use their marketing skills, their finance skills, their social skills, their language skills, and their creative and critical thinking skills, which are important in any business venture. And then they also have an opportunity to learn about the risks associated with developing projects in these emerging markets, the currency risk, the cultural risk. They get a chance to see that firsthand. So it's quite interesting. So we've had a number of successful projects and programs, and we are quite busy. So we're looking for some good students to work with us.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Don. And I know how busy you are, but I want to thank you for still making the time to serve as mentor to some of our students, especially on their market assessment and market risk assessment in Africa for this semester. So that's really something we appreciate.
Yeah, we need all these great minds working with us.
Very good.
It's all good.
I'm going to turn to Joshua and William, and I want to ask you to share with us thoughts about your organization.
Thank you, Mourad. And yeah, I'm glad we're going to have a short presentation. Now, we're in a bit of a different situation than those who have spoken before us in that we are not based in Atlanta. While we do have an office in Atlanta, we'll mention that, but we're actually an organization that has a, well, really a worldwide footprint and opportunities for engagement through internships and careers around the world. So we're going to just do a bit of a brief introduction of our organization. And then at the end, we will also talk about some opportunities. So could I go to the next slide, please? As was mentioned, so just a quick overview. We're going to talk about the International Trade Administration. So what is it? What are the main objectives? I'm guessing most of the students and most in this meeting probably aren't familiar with our organization. So we're going to talk about that. And then I'm actually going to pass it to Will, who's going to go over one particular career path in our organization that may be of interest to students here, especially those nearing graduation, but everyone. And then we're going to talk about a bigger group of opportunities, including current opportunities that are posted online and that are accepting applications, and then we'll wrap up. So if I could please, next slide. All right, so what is the International Trade Administration? You'll see here, I don't want to read the definition, but really what it is, it's a bureau within the US Department of Commerce with over 1,500 employees. There is a big group located in the DC area where Will is based. And there are also offices around the country. There are over 100 offices across the United States, even in Alaska and Hawaii, there are offices. And then there are offices around the world at diplomatic missions. And the mission of the International Trade Administration is to foster economic growth through the export of US goods and services. And secondarily to that, to attract foreign investment into the United States as a means of growing the economy. And you'll see here the business units, and I'll talk about them each here in a second. There are 3 business units. There's global markets, again, where Will and I are housed. And there's something called industry and analysis. And then there's a group called enforcement and compliance. So could I get the next slide, please, Diana? So here you go, just talking a little bit about this. Global markets is really focused on export promotion, working a lot. So this is maybe akin to a lot of the work that some of the other speakers in this meeting are involved with, working with businesses, advising them on international sales opportunities around the world, engaging locally across the US and learning about a given product or service, how that might be exported. A lot of that falls within global markets. And as was mentioned, those positions are actually around the world. The next business unit is industry and analysis, and that's really a bit more research and writing heavy. I think these distinctions are important because there are probably different students that have different either personality types or backgrounds that may be suited for different aspects of this work. So industry and analysis, they write a lot of, they travel with senior officials, they brief them in advance of meetings. You may see a news clip online of the Commerce Secretary or someone, and there's probably someone in the background there from our organization sort of that's prepared that principle for that meeting. So that's a really interesting aspect of our work. And those positions are pretty much exclusively in the DC area. And then the last one here is enforcement and compliance, and that's focused on what we call trade remedy work, which is actually looking more at imports and how they're affecting the US economy, companies in the US. That involves a lot of data analysis. So anyone with a data or engineering background, mathematics, those positions are all based in the DC area. And the interesting thing about that is that also actually includes an international travel component, traveling around the world to visit production facilities is sort of a unique element there. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to pass it now to my colleague, Will Miller, to continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Josh. Next, I want to discuss a particular career example here at ITA. In a nutshell, commercial officers carry out a wide variety of critical functions and work with a broad spectrum of government and private sector organizations to articulate, develop, and also refine United States commercial policies, promote US export, and protect US commercial interests abroad. We have commercial diplomats in about 75 countries all over the globe. In order to qualify to be a foreign commercial service officer, you need to have a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science degree and 3 years of specialized experience. The application process, which we'll be opening up soon, includes an online application through USA Jobs, an oral assessment, and if selected, you'll be placed on what we call a rank order registry. Then eventually will be onboarded. Can we go to the next slide, please? The following video will give you a better insight on exploring a career as a foreign commercial service officer.
Wouldn't it be great to wake up every morning and for once, love what you do? Actually be excited about a Monday again. Do you ever wish you can get paid to travel the world, live in other countries, not just for a few weeks, but for a few years, to really immerse yourself in the culture, get to know the people, and also represent your country while doing it? This is what 250 United States Foreign Service officers do each and every day in over 70 beautiful, exciting, and inspiring countries around the world. Come on, let's go on an adventure. Do you have what it takes to be a United States Foreign Service officer? The openness of mind, a sense of adventure, independence, and the feeling of pride that comes with the opportunity to represent the United States of America wherever you may go in the world. If this adventure sounds like you, we want you to apply today.
Thank you, Diane. I can go to the next slide, please. So I hope you enjoy the video. You can see the full version and learn more about foreign commercial service at trade.gov. We can share that link later with you. You can also follow us on social media. Currently, there are limited paid internships, which are virtual at the moment. And there are also other internships available, both domestically and abroad. Additionally, there are permanent positions, including the Pathways Recent Grad Program. And we also continue to hire through USA Jobs, as mentioned before. Be sure to monitor USA Jobs for Pathway Recent Graduate announcements. I believe Josh is going to put the link, if he hasn't already, in the chat. Next slide, please. So finally, we're happy to talk with anyone interested in this field. So you can, feel free to reach out to us. You can connect with us on LinkedIn or email us directly, and we will do our best to get or respond to you. Our emails are listed there. We also have an Atlanta field office, and you can find the contact information through our website. So that concludes our presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for describing the work that you do and your organizations. Let's see, I'm going to start our discussion with a few basic questions. And I want to remind the audience to please type your questions in the chat area. And I'll start with an easy one. And I'll select maybe John. I'll start with John. And considering all that is going on in the world today, could you share with us why you think students should prepare for a global career?
Well, easy one. That's a long. There is a lot going on today, and kudos certainly to the previous folks at the U.S. Foreign Service. I myself was almost going into the U.S. Foreign Service. I considered it, but they do tremendous work, and it's probably even more relevant now and more important now than it was back when I was considering going into it, because of course what's going on, unfortunately, in Ukraine and the geopolitical situation. I'll steer that away from that. That's not my expertise, to the economic side of things. I work in international trade and investment, as I mentioned, and I mean that's a very relevant factor as well. The U.S. economy, and again, we could go down a rabbit hole on this, but there are some in the domestic politics who think the U.S. should be isolationists and America first and some things like that. And I happen to be more of a globalist, that the U.S. economy cannot live in a bubble. It's very foundation, and its health is dependent on global trade, international trade. So it's a critical time to be in that. There are many opportunities in the international business arena. And I think I'll just, kind of end up, not to dominate the conversation here, but an anecdote folks don't even realize sometimes. And again, I won't go into the rabbit hole of politics, but just a few years ago during one of the elections, there are a lot of folks, America first and this, that, and the other, and they were working in the automotive sector in this general area here in the U.S. Southeast, let's say, and they were actually working for foreign companies. Their job was due to foreign direct investment, and yet they didn't even make that connection, even with their own livelihood. And so it's integral to what we do with the economy, whether frankly one likes it or not. And so it's a critical element on the business side. The geopolitical side is another story, of course, as well. But on international business, it's a critical element, and knowing that and being cognizant of that puts you, gives you a step forward.
Very good, very good. And I'm going to ask William if you have something to add to that important question. In considering what's happening today, why do you think the students still need to prepare for global careers?
So I will let Josh answer that one, because we were discussing that earlier today, and he had a great answer for that one.
Oh, yeah, sure thing, Will, no problem. And thanks for the question, Mourad. I would say, kind of echoing John's comment, yes, this is sort of an unprecedented time in a number of ways, but in terms of global careers and work, there's actually, even with, in some ways, maybe a movement towards looking inward, there is still a really strong need for engagement between countries, including economically and through trade. So I wouldn't anticipate or envision that, sort of regardless of geopolitical environment, that there's going to be let's say, a drop off in the need for young professionals who are familiar with this work and who are qualified. I see that only increasing, continuing the trend, even if there maybe are some bumps along the way.
Very good, very good. And considering that there is a need, and I think there's an agreement here, what would you say are the top skills that your organization is looking for in potential interns or employees? And let me, maybe Dawn, you can start with the skill sets that's the most important. You alluded to that a second ago. Dawn, you are on mute.
Thank you. That's an excellent question, Professor Mourad. I think in terms of skill set, first and foremost, we like to have students who can work independently, because in today's market, and with all the responsibilities we all have, we like to have bright students who can work independently, who can grab a concept fairly quickly and then run with the ball, is a phrase we like to use. And so having students that can work independently, have good business skills, and that means well-rounded skills, understand finance and marketing, understand operations. And so they're fairly well-rounded. And so, and I've seen this with the Georgia State students that we've worked with, they seem to be well-rounded and have, a solid background, so they can take their skill base and then apply that to projects or issues. And so you look for students that have that ability to pick up the ball and run with it. It's good also if they have an idea of the region. If they're either from the region or have an understanding of the region is important. Language skills are also important when we're dealing with different markets. If they have language skills, that's also a plus. But having good, I think, critical thinking skills, also being able to, get in and understand what the issue is. And if they don't understand the issue, ask the right questions and then get those answers very quickly and then move forward. So And again, the students I've worked with at Georgia State have been able to demonstrate that and have done very well. I've been very impressed with their ability to pick up things and get answers and resolve problems very quickly. So I've been very, very impressed with that, the students there.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mourad, I can answer that for commerce if you
Yes,
like.
please. Yeah,
Well,
I was going to ask you.
I would say that the top skills that commerce is looking for are qualitative and quantitative skills, as well as analytical and ability to research and write well. You need to be able to use your qualitative skills and your analytical and research and writing skills in many aspects of this job, especially when articulating our agency positions, internally and externally as well. We also use the quantitative skills to analyze foreign company data and generate tariff margins. That was a big part of our enforcement and compliance division to come up with, generating tariff margins that we work with Customs and Border Protection to put in place. Additionally, communication skills, as Don mentioned, I don't want to leave that one out. We work in a diverse environment and regularly interact with outside parties and often engage with our internal agency and government employees worldwide. So communication is key as well.
Very good, very good. John, you have something to add to the skill set? I think that's something that students would be very interested in.
You got me just got to chew some ice.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I would echo what some of the others have said here. That ability to adapt, the attention to the detail. I mean, it depends on those different sectors that I mentioned. Public policy, the group that I described earlier, obviously would have a background in government, not necessarily government relations, but certainly understanding of government, which I'm afraid there are a lot of people in the citizenry who don't quite understand how government works. And so certainly that understanding, it would be good for, well, it'd be good in general, but certainly good for public policy. On our economic development side, I mean, it's not just a business background, and I saw something on on the thread here about biology. A recent biology graduate chimed in. I mentioned in my earlier remarks that we have certain industry specialists, and these are in areas where we believe Metro Atlanta is well positioned, objectively strong. And just to use the biology one, for example, we go after health IT, global health and health IT as a sectors here that we think are strong. In my opinion, a biology major, biology graduate would be certainly relevant for that role, for an internship. So it's not necessarily a business role. In fact, for our ecosystem sides, we actually prefer folks who have specialty or background in those roles. So supply chain or logistics, for example, would be someone who has that analytic skill. On my side, on the international side, again, I've heard languages mentioned here. We don't require foreign languages. Certainly that helps. Just like understanding government helps in general. But for getting a position, we would like to see the languages. We'd like, more importantly, or I would like, since I head up the group, to see people with that global understanding, that of a collective understanding of what's going on in the world, frankly, and that's somewhat difficult to describe, but you know it when you see it, when folks have it. And so that's something that we like to see. And again, Georgia State University students have been very well, the ones we've worked with have been very well prepared in this. Andrew Young School, for example, here, and some others. So that certainly is a helpful skill set in my field.
Very well, very well.
There was a question. There was a question about the biology background. I wanted to address that. I think, if it's okay, Professor, that it was, I think, specific to healthcare, and I think that if you have a biological background, it's excellent for getting work in the healthcare field or pharmaceutical field, because you have the general understanding of biology and chemistry and things along that line, which are really the basis for some of those industries. And so you have a foundation that allows you to have a general understanding. So you find typically many opportunities either in healthcare services, or in the pharmaceutical area, because you have a general understanding versus, if, say, for example, someone with a business background that may not have had any healthcare or biology training, they will understand the business side, but maybe not the physiological aspect of the biology, that training that you have. So for healthcare and pharma companies, it could be very important.
Very good, very good. And to add to your point, Don, in the most recent project we did on country assessment, I know some of the work is done by William and Joshua's organization, the ITA, and doing business in series. I think healthcare was one of the most common thread as far as business opportunities in foreign markets. And I know at least for every country we looked at, I know we focus on Africa, but that industry seems to be one of the most where there's the highest need, I think, probably for U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. The other key component to keep in mind is that the outside looking in, in terms of foreign countries looking in, the U.S. is always considered a premier leader in healthcare services and technology, and so they typically look for the U.S. for bringing leading edge state-of-the-art technologies to the countries that could address issues. And so having that background, being able to take your biological or engineering background and be able to really get into the nuts and bolts of why this technology is more suitable or has an added advantage, that could be critical, very important for moving that technology or that services forward in that region. But as you're saying, Professor, in a lot of the emerging markets, there's significant needs and opportunities for healthcare technologies and healthcare services, which is just typically not as well done at least to this date, not as well done in these markets. They're getting there, but they have a long way to go typically.
Yeah, true. I know some of you alluded to the foreign languages, and my next question is about that. What recommendation do you have for those in our audience here? Many of them are taking international languages and foreign languages. Are there particular languages that are needed more than others in the field in your area? Maybe I can start with my colleagues from the Department of Commerce, ITA. Maybe William, if you want to take a first stab at that one.
Sure, let me unmute myself real quick. Yeah, so I believe that the study of foreign language teaches and encourages respect for other people while fostering, I guess, an understanding of the interrelation of language and human nature. Being that we have 75 offices all over the world, all languages are needed. There's no particular language that is more important than the other at this point. The Foreign Commercial Service does offer intense language training prior to being sent out on the field abroad. Also, on the flip side, a foreign language is not a requirement to join ITA. While working for ENC, we used to meet with international companies and foreign governments overseas, and we would always hire local translators to accompany us in these meetings. So not everybody knows a second language that works with us, but it's, again, like many people mentioned already, it's very helpful.
Very good, very good. And John, anything to add on the language side?
Well, William's very diplomatic in saying you're not going to rank one language over another. What I would say is on our side, it's what we can do, and again, we approach it from business perspective. We know what countries are the top investors in the area. Basically, Germany, Japan, and UK. Korea is coming up there very quickly. France, Benelux, Scandinavia. So if one's looking at FDI and foreign direct investment, obviously those languages are helpful. Some principal European languages and Asian languages are very helpful in that regard. On the outbound side, it's not necessarily a parallel. On the outbound side, outbound investment, a lot of that goes, not a lot, but a larger percentage of that goes to more developing countries, India, Brazil, Argentina, some areas like that. So there's a little bit more of a breadth of language needs there. But it certainly does help. And I would say that if you're particularly interested in it, I've just found that there are some areas and countries that they're completely comfortable doing their business in English. In fact, they almost prefer to do it. And there are others that it really helps to know that language because the people, the business people you're working with feel much more comfortable doing business in their native tongue. And so just to give an example of those on the former side, rather than the latter, the Dutch, for example, speak English, at least the Dutch who are doing international business, speak English with no problem at all. And they often prefer to do it. It's wonderful to learn Dutch if you know it, but that would not be probably a pressing language to learn as opposed to another language or another group that might be more comfortable in their native tongue. So that's kind of a cryptic response, but certainly I concur with William. It's helpful in general to know a language just because it helps you understand your own language that much better, to be honest. And it's just there are scientific studies about what it does to the brain, but I mean, any sort of language is helpful, in my opinion.
Very good, very nice. I'd like to ask a question about the degrees, and I know this is probably some of the students are also interested in this question. What type of degrees are held by most of your colleagues and the folks that are in your area? And do you think that the graduate degrees are needed or recommended to join your organization? Let me select one here. Joshua, you want to take a first stab at that one?
Yeah, sure thing, Mourad, no problem. So it depends on the position. I believe, so those foreign service positions, I don't believe they have specific degree requirements. Mm-hmm. I'd have to double check if someone really was interested. I know so those positions, for example, that I just posted in the chat that are domestic civil service positions around the US, those do often have, if you're gonna, so without getting into too much detail, for the federal government, you can either apply based upon your academic experience or your professional experience or a combination. And so if you're going to apply like right out of school, whether it be graduate school or undergrad, there are certain degree categories that are listed there that are required. If you were to apply later in your career, you might not necessarily have to have that as your basis for qualifying. In terms of like our degrees that we may have of people that I know anecdotally, business administration is a common one, foreign language, those are sort of international trade, even like a graduate or public policy. Those are kind of the obvious ones, but we're trying to not limit the applicant pool to those where we can. So it depends on the position is the short answer.
Okay, very good. And I want to talk specifically about a question that was on the chat. And this is for Dawn and John, because I saw your answer on the chat, Joshua and William. But here, could you possibly tell us whether opportunities exist for international students in your organization? I'm talking about the chamber and, of course, Princeton Healthcare.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, John.
All right. Well, then I'll try. I was deferring to you, but I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So we don't have dead air. But no, for us, I mean, we do not have a U.S. citizenship requirement. Some of our interns have indeed been international. And in fact, my own lieutenant who recently moved on to a tremendous opportunity, but was with us, he was actually a German national. For us, it's certainly in my line in the international trade and investment, it's perfectly fine. And I wouldn't say it's preferred, but it's certainly there's no difference between U.S. citizenship or international, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, thank you, John. Dawn?
I would say the same. We don't have any U.S. citizen requirement. And, I think back to the point about I'm just going to take it back a step on the language skills, if I may. We find the language skills are important when we're trying to crack into certain markets. So hopefully they have maybe the language skills that helps to break the ice. They can, connect a little bit better. It's a little bit. We find that it's a little bit better connectivity if you do know the language. And so we typically look for folks who do have language skills, but it's not a requirement. So there's no requirement for U.S. citizenship, and the types of backgrounds that we have worked with. And again, it depends on the particular student and the ability to get things done. But it could be business or engineering, or biology, chemistry, or it could be international relations. It really depends on their ability to be resourceful and grasp the ideas and what we're trying to accomplish as a team. So we find that each of the above can be very helpful. It depends a lot on the person and their ability to get things done.
Very good. Thank you, John and Don. A follow-up to this question, and it's does not have to be necessarily just your organization, but what do you think job seeker should do to effectively highlight their global skills and experiences as they go out in the job market? I can maybe start with William, if you have any recommendation, not specifically within your own area, but what would you say one a student should do to highlight those type of skills?
Well, I would just say, in order to highlight those skills, just make sure that, I guess, when reviewing your resume, you make sure that you have and highlight those skills there, as well as your social media and LinkedIn, which people actually look at. So just make sure you highlight it there. I think that's my 2 cents.
Don?
Sure. I just think about a couple of examples.
Yes.
If I may add, a couple of students who have worked with me have all gone on and gotten great jobs at either the World Bank or commerce or companies in their respective market. And so what they were able to do, for example, they may have highlighted a project they worked on with my firm. And so that project, it was very interesting. The project and the success they had with the project gave them a little, added advantage over the competition there, competing students who were going for the same position, because they had some real world experience. They had, a project they could identify and talk about the success that they had with the project. And so I have found, that has been very, very interesting and very helpful to a lot of students. So the ability to differentiate themselves with real projects that they can demonstrate to the new employer that they can transfer those skills to apply that to an opportunity. It typically gives them, I think, an added advantage when they go into the job market looking for an opportunity.
Thank you. John, anything to add in the area of how to highlight those skills? Any recommendations there?
I would just suggest that the students, Georgia State students, have a tremendous advantage in being located in a metro region with a robust international community. And that's not always the case. If you're out on some bucolic campus somewhere in the countryside, it might be nice for that, but it's not necessarily the case. Georgia State, of course, prides itself being a city university, and right here, an integral part of the fabric of the city. And Atlanta is a very global location, increasingly so. So my suggestion would be for students who are looking to maximize their global expertise, get involved with this international community while you're a student. If you like France, get involved with the French American Chamber of Commerce, or at least go to events of the French American Chamber of Commerce, or the Swedish American Chamber, or the German, or there are others there. There's the Goethe Institute for Germans, not just a chamber, but also a cultural side. Japan American Society, for example. My point is that there are there are robust international networks here that are already in place, and that students have the advantage of being right here where they can tap into any of those, and just even attending a reception or attending a seminar helps you get to know what's going on in that community. For example, the Belgian Consul General had a lunch, a working seminar just earlier this week or last week it was, and there were several students in place there in the audience who clearly had an interest in Belgian-U.S. affairs. That's a great way to do it. And you talk with folks afterwards, you learn more about it, you build that expertise on one hand, but also you get out there in that network. And so I would just recommend, as long as you're here in Atlanta, take advantage of where you are, because a lot of other folks don't have that in their backyard they can tap into.
Very good, very good. And this panel is an example of some of the opportunities, of course, with World Affairs Council and some of the other organizations that are out there. Just to piggyback on a point that William made as far as LinkedIn, one thing we do with our students is to, of course, LinkedIn is your front door, right? That's what people see. And on the projects, for example, the project we did with Don, with his company and the others, don't have them buried in your classwork, but have them separated. These are projects. You are doing a project for a company, a real project for a company, and you are providing a set of knowledge and recommendations. So I think, William, LinkedIn has become such a big tool there in the space. And as Don mentioned, highlight those, and your membership to all of some of these opportunities that also John mentioned. So good advice there. I want to switch gears there. We only have a few minutes there left. I want to switch gears and talk about your own personal experiences. And I think there's a question that I think this is one of my favorites. Is there one specific international experience that sticks out in your memory? Tell us about it, tell us why, and why it was significant. And I know you need some time to reflect on that. So I'll throw in this other question here that's kind of related. How have your international experiences helped you develop as a human and as a professional? Right, so I'll give you a second to reflect on those questions, and I will allow a volunteer to jump in and answer this one first. So a unique experience that impacted you, and then, of course, in general, your international experiences. I see Joshua is ready to answer.
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
start with that one. Yeah, no problem, because that's pretty easy for me. Actually, this is taking it back a little bit. When I was in college, I went to the University of Kansas, and they had a study abroad program where I studied at a university in northern Mexico. And I was sort of a part-time student and actually a part-time intern at the US consulate there in that region. So with the commercial service. So that really, I don't exactly know, I guess I'm a very predictable person or something, but I ended up kind of coming back to that agency a number of years later and even working with some of the same people. But I enjoyed that experience so much. I was immersed in the culture. I was interacting with a lot of different American businesses that were coming to visit, attending their meetings, doing all the kinds of things that others have mentioned for internships. I got to do that while I was in college. And I know not everyone has an opportunity to do study abroad, but if they have a way to do it, that was certainly a great start. And I'm sure that's the reason why I'm in the career that I'm in now. I mean, otherwise, I've been fortunate in this role with commerce. While I'm not in the foreign service, I have worked on a number of international projects. And this is all pre-COVID, of course, but including travel to South America with the trade mission program to Chile and Paraguay, to Eastern Europe, to Serbia and Romania with a different trade mission, to Turkey, a few other, I went to India and Bangladesh. That was where I went most recently just before COVID for a very large national program with our agency. So even though I'm located in Kansas City, and before that I was in Richmond, Virginia, not a huge city, I had a lot of chances through this career to have really meaningful international experiences. So those are some that I'd like to share.
Very good, very good. So I'm going to ask John now. And John, if you can share one unique experience that was international, and then maybe reflect on how your international experience as a whole helped you develop personally and professionally.
Well, first I'll chime in, Josh. I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia. Woohoo, there you go. No, I think one, it goes back to what the students know. When I came out of, I was undergraduate in Washington, D.C., actually, not far from Richmond, at Georgetown. And in fact, I was at the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. So my degree was in foreign service. That was my predominant interest. I did a study abroad program. I recommend that if people can do that. I actually matriculated directly overseas in France, in Strasbourg, which I think is a tremendous experience. And I recommend that. And I recommend that to pursue the most authentic of those programs you can, rather than just a study abroad. But just to go into the career path there, as I came out of Georgetown, I did not go in the foreign service. As a matter of fact, I was having too much fun in DC as a 22-year-old. But I went into foreign exchange, a small little boutique FX firm. And I, because of my French language capability, we were trading Francophone African CFA francs. And so I became sort of the go-to person for trading CFA, other currencies as well, but that was the currency for Francophone Africa. And it grew it there. It got me noticed with the senior management at the firm. I went up the totem pole a little bit. And again, it was started from this niche that I'd carved out more by fate than by design of trading in CFA currency. And that was from that. And so I went on to that, and I've been doing international ever since in my career. Now I'll get my contacts in here that you're asking for. Is a purely international job, which is just something I relish entirely.
Very nice, very nice. William, you want to share your thoughts?
Sure. So yeah, being working with E&C enforcement and compliance has allowed me to just travel the world to places that I never would have thought that I would go to. Some the ones that stick up or just pop up in my brain I was in Indonesia, in Jakarta, as well as sometimes you get a chance to, pre-COVID, obviously, to, just do your own thing on your own time. And I was able to go to Bali, travel to Korea, China, and a lot of places in Europe. So yeah, that's to answer your question about how the international experience have helped me develop as a human and as a professional. I guess my international experience have helped me develop a lot. I've traveling and I travel a lot and consider these experiences as some type of therapy, as a way to escape and, get away from the regular day to day. And also these experiences allowed me to learn about different cultures, ideas, values, beliefs, etc., religion. And it's like firsthand experience, which I couldn't get from like reading a book or watching a movie. And it's definitely helped a lot with the professional side. So I do think international experience have definitely helped me accomplish the duties of my current position, and definitely very valuable.
Very good, very good. And Dawn, would like to hear your take on that question, sharing one experience that's unique and how that maybe your experiences collectively.
Of course, Professor, that's a tough one. So there's no one. Everyone always asks me, what was the one experience? I said all the experiences are quite interesting, be it in China or Korea or Thailand or Africa or South America, Brazil or Mexico, anywhere we go, we find it to be quite interesting, exciting, because you're getting a chance to really understand the culture and the people and some of the challenges they're up against. So I find each and every one of the experiences that we have to be quite interesting. And I was fortunate and blessed early in my career. I went to school in Boston, so I, was fortunate enough to work for top firms coming out of school. And so I was early on in my career exposed to international travel when nobody was looking at international travel. And so I was actually traveling overseas, doing work in Europe, and was fortunate enough to have that experience. And then when we created the Princeton Group and started doing work in a lot of the emerging markets, such as in Africa and South America, we started getting exposed to a wide range of other cultures and opportunities. And I think that the key thing that we find is, in terms of my professional career, is that, people have a lot of the same needs no matter where they are, anywhere in the world. And so, people want to have a good life, a good quality of life. They want to have good health care. They want the children to be educated. And so there's a lot of similarities everywhere in the world. So they're not that different when you realize wherever you go in the world, people want a lot of the same things. So if you looked at that as a basis, then when you go into the market, you kind of have I think a greater appreciation for the different cultures. So that's been very good for me. I mean, even though I grew up in New York City where we have a lot of ethnic groups, I think that the difference is when you actually go to the market and work in these areas, you really get a true appreciation for all the different cultures. And that's been fascinating. So being able to learn the cultures and to do business in those markets is quite fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Don. All right. I think we're already a minute past 3. I want to thank Josh, John, William, and Don for sharing your time with us and telling us about some wonderful opportunities at your organizations and sharing some great tips. We appreciate, of course, the recommendation, the advice for current students and recent graduates. Thank you for participating in the GSU Global Career Series. And we want to thank our audience here for attending this session. We hope you enjoyed it. Our next session will focus on careers in the U.S. Foreign Service. It's next Thursday, April 7th, with the U.S. Department of State, USAID, and the Peace Corps. Same time, same place. If you haven't registered, please use the link in the chat. Finally, I'd like to thank the Atlanta Global Studies Center, the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, the Global Studies Program, and GSU Study Abroad programs for organizing the series. All Global Career Series videos can be found on the YouTube channel in the chat. Thank you, everyone, once more, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.